Captain Daywan stood by the large window of the space station. Outside, he could see a massive alien ship moving closer. It was beautiful and strange, with smooth curves and lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. The ship belonged to the Velkari, one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They had been traveling through space for thousands of years, long before humans ever left Earth. Daywan was nervous. He had fought in battles. He had commanded crews through dangerous missions. But diplomatic meetings made him uncomfortable. He was a soldier, not a politician. He preferred clear orders and direct action, not the careful words and hidden meanings of diplomacy. A young officer named Jimin walked up to him. She carried a small electronic tablet and had a slight smile on her face. "Captain, Ambassador Hana wants you at the reception tonight. The Velkari requested military officers to attend." Daywan groaned quietly. "Cannot someone else go? I am not good at these parties." "They specifically asked for military representatives. They want to understand our warrior culture," they said. Jimin looked amused. She had worked with Daywan long enough to know he hated formal events. "Fine. What time?" Daywan asked with a sigh. 2000 hours. Dress uniform required." That evening, Daywan put on his formal military uniform. The dark blue fabric felt stiff and uncomfortable compared to his usual work clothes. He checked himself in the mirror, straightened his jacket, and headed to the reception hall. When he entered, his breath caught. The hall was enormous, with walls made of some kind of crystal that made light dance in rainbow colors across every surface. Beings from many different worlds stood in groups, talking quietly. Some had fur, others had scales, and some looked like they were made of liquid metal. It was beautiful and overwhelming at the same time. Daywan noticed something right away. The older alien races stayed far from the human delegates. They watched the humans with expressions that ranged from curious to dismissive. Humans were the newest members of the galactic community. Many of the ancient races did not take them seriously yet. Ambassador Hana appeared at his side. She was a skilled diplomat who had spent years preparing for first contact. "Captain, thank you for coming. Stay close to me and follow my lead if anyone approaches." Daywan nodded. He scanned the room, his military training making him assess exits and potential threats automatically. Then his eyes stopped on something extraordinary. Near the far wall stood the tallest woman he had ever seen. She was not human. Her skin changed colors as she moved, shifting from deep purple to midnight blue like oil floating on water. She had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on her face. Her body was long and graceful, and she moved with a flowing quality that seemed almost like water. "That is Envoy Lyran," Hana whispered. "She is one of the most important Velkari dancers. In their culture, dance is not entertainment. It is how they communicate important ideas and negotiate agreements." "Their diplomats are dancers?" Daywan asked, confused. "For the Velkari, dance and diplomacy are the same thing. They express complex thoughts through movement. A skilled dancer can convey more meaning in 5 minutes than we can express in hours of talking." Daywan watched Lyran move through the crowd. She was fascinating. Her movement seemed to tell a story, even when she was just walking. Suddenly, music filled the hall. It was unlike any music Daywan had heard before. The sounds were haunting and beautiful, with rhythms that seemed to shift and change just when he thought he understood them. The melody made him feel emotions he could not name. The crowd began moving toward the edges of the room, forming a wide circle. Daywan felt himself being pushed along with them. In the center of the hall, Lyran stood alone. The crystal walls seemed to focus light on her, making her shine. She began to dance. Daywan had never seen anything like it. Lyran moved in ways that seemed impossible for any being with a skeleton. She bent and flowed, her body creating shapes that were both alien and beautiful. Her 3 eyes closed as she lost herself in the movement. The music and the dancer became one thing, inseparable. The entire hall watched in complete silence. Even the species that had seen Valkyrie dances before seemed captivated. This was clearly something special. Lyran danced alone for several minutes. Daewon found himself unable to look away. Despite being so alien, so different from anything human, there was something in her movement that spoke to something deep inside him. It was pure expression, honest and unguarded. Then, without warning, Lyran stopped. She turned toward where Daewon stood in the crowd. Her three eyes opened and focused directly on him. Slowly, deliberately, she extended one long, graceful hand toward him, an invitation. The entire hall fell silent in a new way. This was not the respectful silence of watching a performance. This was the shocked silence of witnessing something unexpected and potentially dangerous. Daewon felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His heart pounded in his chest. What was happening? Why had she chosen him? "Captain," Ambassador Hana whispered urgently beside him, her voice tight with tension. "You need to accept her invitation. To refuse would be a terrible insult to her and her entire species." "But I do not know how to dance," Daewon said quietly, not moving. "Not like that. I will embarrass myself and humanity." "She knows you cannot dance like a Valkyrie. No human can. That is exactly the point." Hana gave him a gentle push forward. "They are testing us." "Testing you. Show them what humans are made of. Show them we are not afraid." Daewon looked at Lyran. Her hand remained extended, waiting. Her expression was unreadable to him, but he thought he saw something like curiosity in her alien features. He took a deep breath. He was a captain in the human fleet. He had faced enemy fire. He had made life and death decisions. He could do this, whatever this was. Daewon stepped forward, out of the crowd and into the open circle. Every step felt heavy. The distance to the center of the hall seemed enormous, though it was only 20 meters. He was aware of hundreds of eyes watching him, judging all of humanity through his actions. When he reached Lyran, he saw she was even taller up close. The top of his head barely reached her shoulder. Her skin continued its slow color shift, and this close he could see patterns moving beneath the surface like currents in deep water. She spoke, and a small device on her clothing translated her words into Korean. Her voice was melodic, rising and falling in ways that seemed more like singing than talking. "You are Captain Daewon of the Earth vessel Horizon. I am told your people are new to the Dance of Stars." Daewon squared his shoulders. "We are new to many things, but I should warn you, I might step on your feet. All 6 of them." The translator device somehow managed to convey her laughter. It sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Several beings in the crowd made sounds of surprise. Apparently, humor was unexpected. "I have read about human humor," Lyran said. "It is one of your species' more interesting qualities. Shall we begin?" The music swelled again, louder this time, and Daewon, with no idea what he was doing, prepared to dance with an alien woman in front of the galaxy's most powerful species. The entire hall held its breath and watched. The music filled the hall like water filling a container, flowing into every space and corner. Daewon stood facing Lyran, completely unsure of what to do next. His military training had prepared him for many situations, but dancing with an alien diplomat in front of dozens of powerful species was not one of them. Lyran began to move. Her body flowed with the music in ways that seemed to defy the basic rules of biology. She bent backward until her head nearly touched the floor, then rose up in a smooth spiral. Her arms moved in patterns that created shapes in the air, each gesture seeming to carry meaning that Daewon could not understand. He tried to follow her movements, but immediately felt clumsy and awkward. His human body simply did not bend that way. He stumbled slightly, catching himself before he actually fell. Heat rushed to his face. He could feel the eyes of the crowd on him, judging his every move. But then something occurred to him. Lyran had not chosen him because she thought he could dance like a Velkhari. She had chosen him knowing he could not. This was not about matching her movements. It could not be. So what was it about? Daewon stopped trying to copy Lyran. Instead, he began to move in the only way he knew how. He thought about the folk dances from his childhood in Korea. He remembered festivals where people danced in groups, their feet striking the ground in unison, creating rhythms that you could feel in your chest. Those dances were nothing like Lyran's flowing movements, but they were human. They were real. He planted his feet firmly and began to move with deliberate, grounded motions. Where Lyran flowed upward, he pressed downward. Where she created curves, he made straight lines. His movements were simple compared to hers, almost primitive, but they had their own kind of power. Lyran noticed the change immediately. Her three eyes focused on him with what seemed like intense interest. She circled around him, her movements adapting slightly. She began using his grounded stance as an anchor point, spiraling around him like wind around a mountain. Daewon realized something incredible was happening. They were not dancing the same dance, but they were dancing together. Her movements and his movements were different, but they complemented each other. It was like a conversation between two people who spoke different languages, but were learning to understand each other anyway. The music shifted, becoming more complex. Daewon felt his breathing grow heavier. This was more physically demanding than he had expected. Every muscle in his body was working, trying to maintain the controlled movements while staying aware of Lyran's position. Sweat began to form on his forehead, but he did not stop. Could not stop. At the edge of the hall, Lieutenant Jimin stood with her hand pressed over her mouth. Her eyes were wide with amazement. Beside her, Ambassador Hana watched with an expression of barely controlled anxiety mixed with hope. "I did not expect this," Hana whispered. Commander Hyuk, a tactical officer who had served with Daewon for years, leaned closer. "Expect what? He is just moving around, barely staying upright." "Look at the Velkhari delegation," Hana said quietly. "Look at their faces." Hyuk turned his attention to the group of Velkhari representatives standing near the front of the crowd. Their skin colors were changing rapidly, shifting through purples, blues, and even flashes of bright green. "What does that mean?" "Deep emotion," Hana said. "They are experiencing something profound. I have never seen such a strong reaction from them." One of the Velkhari, an individual who looked ancient even by their standards, leaned toward a younger aide. His skin was covered in intricate markings that indicated high status. He spoke in their melodic language, and though the humans could not hear his words, they could see the intensity in his expression. Back in the center of the hall, the dance continued. Daewon was beginning to understand the rhythm better now. He found patterns in the music that his human ears could grasp. The Velkhari composition had seemed completely alien at first, but underneath the strange melodies were mathematical patterns, rhythms built on ratios and sequences. His mind, trained for tactical analysis, began picking them apart. He started anticipating the music's changes, moving in sync with beats that he could feel coming before they arrived. Lyran noticed this too. Her movements became more elaborate, as if she was testing him, seeing how well he could read the patterns. Daewon met her challenge. When the music swelled, he moved with more force. When it softened, he slowed his movements. He was not graceful, not by Velkhari standards, but he was present, fully engaged. giving everything he had. Then something unexpected happened. Lyran changed her style. Her movements, which had been purely Velkari until this point, began incorporating elements of what Day One was doing. She planted her feet more firmly. Her flowing curves became mixed with occasional straight lines. She was adapting to him, meeting him halfway between their two species' ways of moving. The crowd noticed. Murmurs spread through the various alien delegations. This was clearly not normal Velkari behavior. Something significant was happening, though most of the humans did not understand exactly what. The ancient Velkari elder's skin flashed a bright silver color. The aide beside him made a sound of surprise. Whatever was happening on the dance floor, it carried meaning far beyond what any human present could comprehend. Daewon felt the music building toward something. The rhythm was increasing, becoming more intense. His legs burned with exhaustion. His lungs worked hard to pull in enough air, but he pushed through, refusing to give up. If this was a test of human determination, he would not fail. Lyran moved faster, her body creating increasingly complex patterns. Daewon responded with his own increases in intensity. His feet struck the floor harder, creating audible thuds that became part of the music itself. The crystal walls seemed to vibrate with each impact. They circled each other, moved together, separated, and came back. The dance had developed its own logic, its own story. It spoke of two different beings trying to understand each other, of confusion and discovery, of maintaining one's own identity while finding common ground. The music reached a peak of intensity. Daewon knew this was the crucial moment. Lyran spun toward him, her arms extended. Without thinking, operating purely on instinct, Daewon reached out and caught her hands in his. Their eyes met. Human and Velkari. Two evolutionary paths that had never crossed in billions of years of cosmic history, now connected through this simple touch. Lyran's skin flashed bright gold, a color Daewon had not seen before. Around the hall, several species gasped. Even the normally stoic Mordek delegation showed signs of surprise. The music continued, but softer now. Daewon and Lyran moved together, hands connected, their movements becoming simpler and more synchronized. They swayed gently, finding a rhythm that belonged to neither species but existed between them. Ambassador Hana felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not fully understand what was happening, but she knew it was important. Somehow, this simple dance was accomplishing what months of careful diplomacy had not. It was building a bridge between species. The music began to fade. Daewon and Lyran's movements slowed until they stood still, hands still connected, facing each other in the center of the hall. The last notes of music echoed off the crystal walls and then disappeared into silence. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire hall seemed frozen, as if afraid that any sound might break whatever spell had been cast. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap. The sound was strange, not quite human, but the meaning was clear. Approval, appreciation, recognition that something extraordinary had just occurred. Others joined in. Different species had different ways of showing approval, but soon the hall was filled with a cacophony of sounds, all expressing the same sentiment. Even some of the Velkari delegation participated, their skin rippling with bright colors that their species used to express joy. Daewon, still catching his breath, looked around in amazement. Whatever he had expected when he stepped into this dance, it was not this overwhelming positive response. Lyran released his hands slowly and stepped back. She spoke, her voice translated immediately. "You honor my people and yours with your honesty, Captain Daewon." Before he could respond, a harsh voice cut through the celebration. The voice was human, and it was angry. The celebration stopped instantly. Every being in the hall turned toward the source of the angry voice. It belonged to Ambassador Yon Ah, one of the senior members of Earth's diplomatic team. She pushed through the crowd, her face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. "This is a complete mockery," Yana said loudly, her voice echoing off the crystal walls. "Captain Daywan has made humanity look foolish in front of the entire galactic community. Dancing like a child while representatives from ancient civilizations watch?" Daywan felt his stomach sink. The joy of the moment evaporated instantly. He had been so focused on the dance itself that he had not considered the political implications. Perhaps he had made a terrible mistake. Perhaps his clumsy human movements had indeed embarrassed his species. "Ambassador," Daywan began, trying to keep his voice respectful, "Envoy Lyran invited me to dance. I was told that refusing would be an insult." "So you accepted, and then you made a spectacle," Yeona snapped. "We are trying to earn respect here. We are trying to show these ancient species that humans deserve a place at the table, and you reduced us to primitive savages stomping around on a dance floor." The words stung. Daywan had tried his best. He had given everything he had. But perhaps his best was not good enough. Perhaps humans were not ready for this level of diplomacy. Then Lyran moved. She stepped forward, placing herself between Daywan and Ambassador Yeon-Ah. When she spoke, her voice was soft but carried an unmistakable authority. The translator device on her collar made sure everyone in the hall could hear. "Ambassador Yeon-Ah, I must respectfully disagree with your assessment. Captain Daywan did not make your species look foolish. He made your species look real." Yeona opened her mouth to respond, but Lyran continued. "For thousands of years my people have danced with other Velkari. We know every step, every gesture, every possible movement. It is beautiful, but it is also completely predictable. There is no surprise, no discovery." Lyran turned slightly to look at Daywan. "When I danced with your captain, I experienced something I have never felt before. He did not pretend to be Velkari. He did not try to copy movements he could not possibly replicate with his different biology. Instead, he showed me what it means to be human. That is a gift beyond measure." The ancient Velkari elder stepped forward. His movements were slow and deliberate, showing his great age. When he reached the center of the hall, every eye fixed on him. This was clearly an individual of immense importance. "I am called by the ancient waves," the elder said, his voice resonating through the translator system. "I have lived for 400 of your human years. I have witnessed thousands of dances. I have participated in negotiations with every species represented in this hall." He paused, his three eyes moving slowly across the crowd before settling on Daywan. "Never in my long life have I seen such an honest expression of cultural identity. Captain Daywan did not attempt to become something he is not. He embraced what he is. That takes a courage that many species, including my own, have forgotten." The elder turned to address the entire gathering. "We ancient races have become comfortable in our traditions. We perform the same rituals we have performed for millennia. We follow the same protocols. We speak the same careful words. We have forgotten how to take risks, how to be vulnerable, how to show our true selves." He gestured toward Daywan. "This human captain, thrown into a situation he did not understand, chose honesty over safety. He chose to fail with authenticity rather than succeed with pretense. That is why the young species often surprise us. They have not yet learned to hide behind masks of diplomatic perfection." Ambassador Hana seized the opportunity. She stepped forward, her diplomatic training allowing her to read the moment perfectly. "The galaxy has functioned under the same rules for thousands of years. Ancient protocols guide every interaction. While we respect these traditions, humanity brings something different. Not because we are better, but because we are new. We see problems that you may no longer notice. We ask questions that you may have stopped asking. A representative from the Sardek delegation spoke up. The Sardeks were a species of brilliant scientists known for their logical approach to everything. And what happens when your fresh eyes see something they should not see? When your inexperience leads to disaster? New perspectives can be dangerous. Then we make mistakes, Daewon said quietly. All eyes turned to him again. He stood straighter, finding his confidence. Yes, we will make mistakes. Probably many mistakes, just like every species did when they were young. But we will also bring new solutions to old problems. Is that not valuable? New solutions often create new problems, a Torvan delegate rumbled. The Torvans were a militant species, covered in chitinous armor plates. They had been among the loudest critics of humanity's admission to the galactic community. That is true, Daewon acknowledged, but old solutions to old problems have left the galaxy where it is now. You have peace, yes, but what else do you have? When was the last time your species created something truly new? When did you last take a risk? The Torvan delegates' armor plates rattled, a sign of agitation in their species. But before he could respond, another Torvan stepped forward. This one wore markings that indicated high rank. It was Overseer Crix, one of the most conservative members of the Torvan leadership. The human makes a valid point, Crix said. The translator struggled to convey the surprise in his tone. My people have fought the same wars against the same enemies for 300 cycles. We perfect our weapons, we refine our tactics, but we do not innovate. We have become stuck in our ways. This admission sent ripples of shock through the hall. The Torvans admitting any weakness was unprecedented. Several delegates began talking at once, their voices rising in debate. The translator system struggled to keep up, creating a confusing babble of overlapping languages. Lyran moved closer to Daewon again. She spoke in a voice meant only for him, quiet enough that the translator barely picked it up. There is something you should know, Captain. Something important. Daewon looked at her, seeing concern in her alien features. What is it? This dance we shared. It was not merely a performance. In Velkari culture, when two beings of different species dance together in the formal setting, it represents a proposal. Not marriage, as you might think, but a proposal of alliance, cultural, political, and spiritual connection. Daewon felt his blood run cold. I did not know that. Does that mean... It means that I have formally proposed an alliance between the Velkari and humanity. And by dancing with me, completing the dance, you accept it on behalf of your species. Lyran's skin shifted to a darker blue. I did not know if you understood the significance when you accepted my invitation. I had no idea, Daewon admitted. His mind raced. What had he done? He was just a military captain. He had no authority to commit humanity to a formal alliance. This could be a diplomatic disaster. Would it have changed your decision? Lyran asked. If you had known? Daewon thought about this carefully. Would he have refused if he had known? The alliance with the Velkari could transform humanity's position in the galaxy. But it would also bring responsibilities and complications that he could not begin to imagine. I do not know, he said honestly. But I cannot change what happened. Before Lyran could respond, called by the ancient waves raised one long arm. The gesture commanded immediate silence. The entire hall quieted instantly, even those who had been arguing loudly seconds before. There is more you all should know, the elder said. His voice carried a weight that made it clear this was a significant moment. This evening was not merely a cultural exchange, it was a test. Murmurs spread through the crowd again. Daewon felt his heart pounding. A test? What kind of test? My apprentice Lyran did not choose Captain Daewon randomly, the elder continued. We have been observing humanity closely since first contact was established. We have watched how you interact with other species. how you solve problems, how you face challenges. The elder's three eyes seemed to glow with an inner light. We see in humanity something that reminds us of our own people from millennia ago. Before we became refined and cautious, before we grew comfortable, we see the species we once were, full of energy and curiosity and willingness to take risks. He paused, and the silence in the hall became absolute. Every being waited for his next words. The Velkari wished to propose a formal alliance with humanity, not as elders guiding children, not as superior beings helping primitives, but as equals. As partners who can learn from each other. The hall erupted. The sound was deafening as representatives from dozens of species all reacted at once. Some voices expressed shock, others anger. A few showed excitement. The carefully maintained diplomatic calm shattered completely. Commander Hayek leaned toward Lieutenant Jimin. Did we just witness history being made? I think, Jimin replied slowly, her voice filled with awe. Captain Daewon just changed everything. The chaos in the hall continued for several minutes. Delegates argued with each other in their native languages. The translator systems produced a confused mixture of sounds that made it hard to understand anything clearly. Some species seemed excited by the announcement. Others appeared angry or frightened. The Velkari proposing a formal alliance with humanity was not something anyone had expected. Daewon stood in the center of it all, feeling completely overwhelmed. He was a military officer. He led ship crews and made tactical decisions. He was not trained for this level of politics. Yet somehow he had become the center of what might be the most important diplomatic moment in human history. Ambassador Yeona pushed through the crowd toward him. Her earlier anger had transformed into something more complex. She looked shocked, calculating, and perhaps a bit impressed all at once. Captain, do you understand what you have done? Not entirely, Daewon admitted. I just danced. You just danced, Yeon-ah repeated, shaking her head in disbelief. You just danced your way into the most significant alliance offer humanity has ever received. The Velkari are one of the founding members of the Galactic Council. Their support could change everything for us. Ambassador Hana joined them, her expression serious. But it also brings enormous responsibility. An alliance means obligations. If the Velkari face a threat, they would expect our support. If they take a political position, we would be expected to stand with them. Why would they want an alliance with us? Daewon asked. We are so new. We have almost nothing to offer them. Called by the ancient waves approached, moving through the crowd with ease despite his age. Other beings stepped aside to let him pass, showing respect for his status. That is precisely why we want this alliance, Captain. Because you believe you have nothing to offer, when in fact you have everything we have lost. The elder gestured for them to follow him to a quieter corner of the hall, away from the loudest arguments. Lyran came too, along with several other Velkari representatives. Once they were relatively isolated from the chaos, the elder continued speaking. My people have existed for over 10,000 of your years. We have mastered arts and sciences that most species cannot even comprehend. We can communicate through thought. We can shape matter with our minds. We have created wonders that span star systems. He paused, his skin shifting to a sad gray color. But we have also become stagnant, stuck, unable to grow. One of the other Velkari, a younger individual named Tavon, spoke up. We do everything the same way we have always done it. We follow traditions that are thousands of years old. When we face a new problem, we apply old solutions. We have forgotten how to truly innovate. You have clearly mastered many things, Daewon said carefully. Your technology is far beyond ours. Your culture is ancient and sophisticated. What could humans possibly teach you? How to fail, the elder said simply. Daewon blinked in confusion. Excuse me? How to fail, the elder repeated. How to try something without knowing if it will work. How to make mistakes and learn from them. How to take risks when you are not sure of the outcome. His three eyes focused intently on Daewon. When I invited you to dance with Lyran, you had no idea what you were doing. You were clearly uncomfortable and uncertain. A Velkhari in that situation would have refused the invitation rather than risk embarrassment. I almost did refuse, Daewon admitted. But you did not. You stepped forward despite your fear. You attempted something difficult without any guarantee of success. That is what we have lost. That willingness to be vulnerable, to potentially fail, in pursuit of something new. Lyran added, Every dance I have performed has been perfect by Velkhari standards. I have practiced for decades. I know every movement. But perfection becomes boring. It becomes empty. Dancing with you, Captain, with all your human imperfection and uncertainty, I felt truly alive for the first time in years. A commotion drew their attention back to the main hall. A representative from the Mordek delegation, a species known for their skepticism and careful nature, was speaking loudly. The Mordek looked like beings made of living stone, with rough textured skin and eyes that glowed like embers. This proposed alliance is dangerous, the Mordek delegate declared. The Velkhari have maintained careful neutrality for 800 cycles. They have avoided entangling alliances that might draw them into conflicts. Why change this policy now? Why risk stability for the sake of a species that has barely left their home system? Other species voiced agreement. The Sardek representative spoke about the risks of unpredictable partnerships. A delegate from the Threxian collective questioned whether humanity was mature enough for such responsibility. Even some of the more friendly species expressed concerns about moving too quickly. Ambassador Hana stepped forward to address the gathering. Her voice was calm and professional, the voice of someone who had spent years training for exactly this kind of moment. The delegate from Mordek raises valid concerns. Change is always risky. But I would ask you all to consider another question. What is the risk of not changing? She gestured around the hall. How long has the galactic community operated under the current system? How many centuries have passed with the same alliances, the same power structures, the same approaches to problems? And in that time, what great challenges have been solved? What progress has been made? A Sardek scientist spoke up. We have maintained peace. That is no small achievement. You have maintained a balance of power, Hana corrected gently. Peace and stagnation are not the same thing. Yes, you have avoided major wars. But you have also avoided growth, innovation, true cooperation between species with different viewpoints. Overseer Crix, the Torvan delegate who had surprisingly supported Daewon earlier, stepped forward. The human speaks truth. My people have been fighting border skirmishes with the Ranthek for 300 cycles, the same conflicts over the same territories. Neither side willing to try a new approach because we are stuck in our traditional thinking. And what if a human approach makes things worse? Someone challenged. Then we learn from that failure and try something else, Crix replied. But at least we try. At least we move forward instead of repeating the same patterns endlessly. The ancient Velkhari elder raised his arm again, commanding attention. I understand your concerns. An alliance between the Velkhari and humanity would shift the balance of galactic politics. Other species might feel threatened or excluded. But consider what this alliance represents. He moved to stand beside Daewon, placing one long hand on the human's shoulder. This is not about military power or economic advantage. This alliance is about something more fundamental. It is about remembering how to grow, how to take risks, how to embrace uncertainty as a path to discovery rather than something to be feared. Tavon, the younger Velkhari, added, We are not asking other species to approve of this alliance. We are simply informing you that it will happen. But we hope you will see it as an opportunity. an opportunity to examine your own cultures and ask whether you too have become stuck in old patterns. A long silence followed these words. The various delegates looked at each other, some with suspicion, others with thoughtfulness. The hall had been filled with chaos just minutes before. Now it felt heavy with consideration as beings from across the galaxy pondered what had been said. Finally, a representative from the Minari people spoke. The Minari were one of the more peaceful species, known for their philosophical nature. Perhaps the question is not whether this alliance is wise. Perhaps the question is whether we have the courage to accept what it represents. Change is frightening. The unknown is frightening. But fear should not be the force that guides our choices. Several other delegates murmured agreement. The mood in the hall was shifting. Not everyone was convinced, but the absolute opposition that had dominated the initial reaction was softening into something more complex. Ambassador Yeona approached Daewon again. This time her expression held respect, though she still looked somewhat annoyed. "Captain, it appears you have accidentally become the most important human in the galaxy right now. How does that feel?" Daewon looked at Lyran, then at the Ancient Elder, then at the gathered representatives from countless worlds. "Honestly, terrifying. I just wanted to not embarrass humanity at a diplomatic reception. Instead, you changed galactic politics," Yona said dryly. "Try to avoid any more dancing for now. I am not sure the galaxy can handle additional surprises." But even as she spoke, Daewon could see something like pride in her eyes. Perhaps she understood that sometimes the most important moments come from unexpected places, that sometimes protocol and careful planning matter less than simple honesty and willingness to take risks. The reception continued, but everything had changed. The dance that had started as a simple invitation had become a symbol of what was possible when beings from different worlds chose connection over caution, when they chose to dance together despite not knowing all the steps. 3 days had passed since the reception. 3 days since Daewon's dance had somehow triggered a political earthquake that was still sending shockwaves through the galaxy. He sat in his quarters on the diplomatic station, watching news feeds from dozens of worlds. Every major network was discussing the proposed Velkari-human alliance. Opinion was sharply divided. Some species saw it as a positive development. They spoke about the need for fresh perspectives and new approaches to old problems. Others viewed it with deep suspicion. They worried about disrupting the careful balance of power that had kept the peace for centuries. A few were actively hostile, seeing humanity as dangerous upstarts who were rising too quickly through the galactic hierarchy. There was a knock on his door. "Come in," Daewon called. Lieutenant Jimin entered, carrying a tablet. "Sir, you have been invited to address the Galactic Council. They want to hear directly from you about the events at the reception." Daewon felt his stomach drop. The Galactic Council? The actual council? "Yes, sir. It seems your dance has become the most discussed political event in recent memory. They want to understand what happened and what it means for the future." Jimin looked sympathetic. "I know you did not sign up for this." "That is an understatement." Daewon stood and began pacing. "I am a ship captain. I know how to run a crew and plan tactical operations. I do not know how to address the leaders of the galaxy." "You knew how to dance with Envoy Lyran. You figured that out." "I barely figured that out. I just tried not to fall on my face." Jimin smiled slightly. "And that honesty is exactly why everyone is so interested. Sir, you did not pretend to be something you are not. That seems to be exactly what the galaxy needs right now." After Jimin left, Daewon prepared for the council address. He put on his formal uniform, checked his appearance in the mirror, and tried to organize his thoughts. What could he possibly say that would matter to beings who had been navigating galactic politics for thousands of years? The council chamber was even more impressive than the reception hall. It was a vast circular room with seating arranged in rising tiers. Representatives from all the major galactic species sat in their designated areas. The architecture was ancient, built from materials Daiwan could not identify. Everything about the space spoke of power and history. Ambassador Hana met him at the entrance. "I will be there with you, but they specifically requested that you do most of the speaking. They want to hear from the human who danced with Lyran, not from the diplomatic corps." "No pressure, then," Daewon muttered. They walked to the center of the chamber. Every eye followed them. Daewon had faced enemy fire in combat situations, but somehow this was more intimidating. These beings could decide the future of his entire species with their votes and opinions. The Council Arbiter, a being from the oldest known species in the galaxy, called the session to order. Her species, the Primordials, were energy beings who took physical form only when necessary. She appeared as a glowing figure of light, vaguely humanoid but constantly shifting. "Captain Daewon of Earth," her voice resonated directly in his mind, translated perfectly by some technology he did not understand. "You have requested an alliance with the Velkari people. This is an unprecedented move. Explain to this council why such an alliance serves the interests of galactic stability." Daewon took a deep breath. He had prepared several diplomatic answers, carefully worded phrases that Ambassador Hana had helped him craft. But standing here, looking at the assembled representatives, those prepared words felt hollow, wrong. He decided to speak from the heart instead. "Honored Arbiter, honored council members, I did not request this alliance. I just accepted an invitation to dance. But standing here now, I can tell you what I learned from that experience." He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many beings as possible. "I learned that connection is more important than perfection. When I danced with Envoy Lyran, I could not match her skill or grace. My movements were simple and rough compared to hers. But we still created something meaningful together. We still communicated across the vast differences between our species." A delegate from the Vorthan Combine spoke up. "Beautiful words, Captain, but alliances require more than good feelings. They require shared interests and compatible goals. What interests does humanity share with the Velkari?" "Growth," Daewon answered immediately. "The Velkari want to remember how to grow, how to innovate, how to take risks. Humanity wants to learn from species with thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. Both of our peoples benefit from learning from each other." "The Velkari are one of the most powerful species in the galaxy," another delegate said. This one was from the Kelthran Unity. "An alliance with them elevates humanity's status dramatically. Some might say too dramatically. Your species has been part of the galactic community for only 3 years. Why should you receive such special treatment?" "We should not," Daewon said simply. "You are right. By any objective measure, humanity has not earned this. But maybe that is the point. Maybe advancement should not only be about earning things through time and tradition. Maybe sometimes it should be about potential. About what different species can accomplish together." The Council Arbiter's glow brightened slightly. "An interesting perspective. But potential is not the same as proven capability. The Velkari are proposing to tie their political future to a species that is largely unknown and untested." Called by the ancient waves, stood in the Velkari section of the chamber. "If I may address the council?" "You may, Elder. My people have been tested many times over our long history. We have proven our capabilities again and again. But we have also become comfortable, too comfortable. We solve every problem the same way we have always solved problems. We think the same thoughts we have always thought." The Elder's voice carried conviction. "Humanity challenges us. They see the universe differently. That fresh perspective is valuable beyond measure. But it is also dangerous, countered a Sardec scientist. New perspectives can lead to chaos, to mistakes that destabilize carefully balanced systems. Yes, the elder agreed. There will be mistakes. Both species will make errors as we learn to work together. But the alternative is continued stagnation. Is that truly preferable to the risk of growth? The debate continued for over an hour. Representatives from different species asked questions and raised concerns. Some were hostile. Others were genuinely curious. A few were surprisingly supportive. Through it all, Daewon tried to answer honestly, without pretending to have all the answers. Finally, a representative from the peaceful Minari people asked a question that silenced the chamber. Captain Daewon, if this alliance brings conflict to humanity, if it results in your people facing dangers you would not have faced otherwise, would you still consider it worthwhile? Daewon considered this carefully. It was a fair question. An alliance with the Velkari would indeed bring responsibilities and potential dangers. Humanity might be drawn into conflicts that were not their own. People might die because of this decision. I cannot answer that question, he said slowly, because I do not have the authority to commit my entire species to that risk. I am one person, one captain, but I can tell you what I believe. I believe that staying safe and staying isolated are not the same as living well. Every species here took risks to reach the stars. You all faced dangers and paid costs to become what you are now. Why should humanity be denied that same journey? The Minari representative seemed satisfied with this answer. Others nodded thoughtfully. The mood in the chamber had shifted. The initial suspicion and hostility had not disappeared, but it had been tempered by Daewon's straightforward honesty. Ambassador Hana stepped forward. The human delegation would like to make a formal proposal. We understand the Council's concerns about this alliance. We propose a trial period, 5 years during which the Velkari and humanity work together on joint projects, cultural exchanges, scientific collaborations, diplomatic coordination. At the end of 5 years, both species can evaluate whether the alliance serves their interests and whether it should be made permanent. This suggestion caused more discussion among the delegates. A trial period was less risky than an immediate permanent alliance. It gave everyone time to observe and learn. Several species that had been firmly opposed now seemed more open to the idea. Lyran stood in the Velkari section. My people accept this proposal. A trial period of 5 years, after which both species will decide whether to continue. The council arbiter's glow pulsed several times, a sign she was conferring with advisors through methods Daewon could not perceive. Finally, she addressed the chamber. The council will take this proposal under advisement. We will vote within 1 planetary rotation. Captain Daewon, you are dismissed. Thank you for your testimony. Daewon and Hana left the chamber together. Once they were out of earshot of the other delegates, Hana let out a long breath. That went better than I feared and worse than I hoped. Will they approve it? Daewon asked. Maybe. The trial period was a smart suggestion. It gives the cautious species a way to support the alliance without fully committing. But there are still many who oppose any special relationship between humanity and the Velkari. She looked at him appraisingly. You did well in there. Your honesty is either going to save us or destroy us. Comforting thought. That evening, Daewon received a message asking him to meet Lyran in one of the station's observation decks. He found her there, standing by the large windows, watching stars drift past. Lyran turned as Daewon approached. Her skin was displaying colors he had not seen before, a soft mix of pale blue and silver that seemed to glow in the dim light of the observation deck. Thank you for coming, Captain. I wanted to speak with you away from the politicians and delegates. Of course. Daewon joined her at the window. Outside, A massive gas giant planet rotated slowly, its storms creating swirling patterns of color across its surface. Beautiful view. Yes, I come here when I need to think. Lyran was quiet for a moment before continuing. I owe you an apology. Daewon looked at her in surprise. An apology? For what? For putting you in this position. When I invited you to dance, I knew it would have political implications. I knew it would change things, but I did not fully consider how it would affect you personally. Her three eyes met his. You were a military officer with a clear role and purpose. Now you are a symbol, a political figure. That is not what you signed up for. No, Daewon admitted. It is not. But I do not regret it. The dance, I mean. That moment when we were moving together, finding a rhythm between our two species, that was real. It mattered. It did matter, Lyran agreed. It still matters. But I worry about the cost. For you, for your people. Daewon turned away from the window to face her directly. Can I ask you something? Why did you really choose me? The Elder says you were testing humanity. But there were other humans at that reception, diplomats who might have handled the situation more gracefully. Why a military officer who had no training in dance? Lyran's skin shifted to a deeper blue. The color he had learned indicated deep thought or emotion. I watched you when you entered the hall. You were uncomfortable, out of place. But you did not hide it. You did not pretend to be comfortable when you were not. Most beings, when entering unfamiliar situations, put on masks. They show confidence they do not feel, project certainty they do not possess. She gestured with one long hand. You did not do that. You were obviously nervous, obviously uncertain. But you observed everything carefully. You watched. You learned. And when Ambassador Hana explained something to you, you listened with genuine interest. Not polite attention. Real interest. So you chose me because I looked nervous? Daewon could not help but smile at the irony. I chose you because you were honest. Even in your discomfort. Especially in your discomfort. You remained yourself. That is a rare quality, one my people have forgotten. Lyran moved closer. When I am in formal situations, I always know exactly what to do. Every gesture has been practiced thousands of times. Every word has been carefully chosen. I am perfect, and perfectly alone. Daewon began to understand. You wanted someone who did not know the steps. Someone who would force you to be real instead of perfect. Yes, and you gave me that gift. Lyran's skin displayed a warm golden color now. When we danced, I could not rely on ancient patterns and practiced movements. I had to respond to you in the moment. I had to be present. It was the most alive I have felt in decades. They stood together in silence for a while, watching the gas giant rotate. Finally, Daewon spoke again. What happens if the Council rejects the alliance? Will that be it? Will our species just go back to formal diplomatic relations? Probably. The Elder and I will have embarrassed ourselves politically. The conservative factions in Velkari society will use this as proof that innovation is dangerous. Things will go back to how they were. Lyran's skin dimmed slightly. And I will go back to perfect practice dances that mean nothing. I do not think the Council will reject it, Daewon said. Not completely. The trial period gives them a way to say yes without fully committing. Politicians love compromise. Perhaps, but even if they approve, there will be challenges. Many species are uncomfortable with this alliance. Some will actively work against it. She looked at him. Your life will become more complicated. You may face opposition and criticism. Are you prepared for that? Daewon thought about his life before the reception. Commanding a ship was challenging but straightforward. Follow orders, complete missions, protect your crew. Simple, clear, understandable. His life now would be none of those things. No, he said honestly. I am not prepared. but I will do my best anyway. That seems to be the human approach to most things." Lyran made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "That attitude is exactly why my people want this alliance. You face the unknown without pretending you have all the answers." The door to the observation deck opened. Lieutenant Jimin entered, slightly out of breath. "Captain, sorry to interrupt. The Council has reached their decision. They are calling everyone back to the chamber now." Daewon and Lyran exchanged glances. "That was fast," he said. "Is that good or bad?" "Unknown," Jimin replied. "Ambassador Hana says to come immediately." The council chamber was already filled when they arrived. The atmosphere was tense. Delegates whispered to each other in their various languages. Some looked pleased. Others appeared angry or concerned. The council arbiter floated at the center of the chamber, her glowing form pulsing steadily. "Order!" she called, and the room fell silent. "The Galactic Council has considered the proposal for a trial alliance between the Velkari people and humanity. We have heard testimony from multiple parties. We have debated the benefits and risks. Now we will announce our decision." Daewon felt his heart pounding. Beside him, Ambassador Hana stood perfectly still, but he could see tension in her shoulders. In the Velkari section, called by the ancient waves, waited with his usual calm dignity, but even he showed signs of anticipation. "The council has voted," the arbiter continued. "By a margin of 63 to 37, with 12 abstentions, we approve the trial alliance period of 5 years. During this time, the Velkari and humanity will engage in joint projects, cultural exchanges, and diplomatic coordination. At the end of 5 years, both species will evaluate the alliance and decide whether to make it permanent." A wave of sound swept through the chamber. Some delegates cheered. Others protested. The arbiter raised her glowing arms, calling for order. However, the council imposes several conditions. First, the alliance must not obligate either species to military action without explicit approval from this council. Second, both species must submit annual reports detailing the alliance's progress and impacts. Third, any major disputes between the Velkari and humanity must be mediated by neutral council representatives. These conditions were reasonable, expected even. Ambassador Hana looked relieved. In the Velkari section, the elder bowed his head in acceptance. But then the arbiter continued. "Additionally, the council appoints Captain Daewon as the primary human liaison for this alliance." Daewon felt the blood drain from his face. "What?" "You initiated this situation through your actions at the reception," the arbiter explained. "You demonstrated the qualities that make this alliance worthwhile. Therefore, you will serve as the bridge between the two species during the trial period. You will work directly with Envoy Lyran to coordinate projects and resolve issues." Ambassador Hana leaned close to whisper, "This is actually good. It shows the council trusts you personally, even if they are uncertain about the broader alliance." "But I am a military officer," Daewon protested quietly. "Not a diplomat." "You are whatever the galaxy needs you to be now," Hana replied. "Welcome to politics." The session continued for another hour as delegates asked questions about the specific terms and conditions. Daewon barely heard any of it. His mind was spinning. He had gone from a ship captain to a galactic political figure in less than a week, all because he had accepted an invitation to dance. Finally, the session ended. Delegates began filing out. Some congratulating the human and Velkari delegations, others making their displeasure known. Overseer Crix, the Torvan who had surprisingly supported them, approached Daewon. "Captain, my people remain skeptical of this alliance, but you spoke well in the council. You showed honesty. That counts for something among the Torvans." His armored plates rattled slightly. "If you need support in the future, remember that not all of us oppose change." "Thank you, Overseer. That means a great deal." After most of the delegates had left, called by the ancient waves, approached with Lyran. "Congratulations, Captain. You have achieved something remarkable. Not just the Alliance approval, but the way you achieved it. With honesty and authenticity, that will be remembered." "I am not sure I achieved anything," Daewon said. "I just tried not to embarrass myself. And in trying not to embarrass yourself, you showed us all what true dignity looks like. Not perfection, but honest effort." The elder placed a hand on Daewon's shoulder. "The next 5 years will be challenging. You will face opposition. You will make mistakes. But you will also create something new, something important." Lyran stepped forward. "It seems we will be working together closely, Captain. I look forward to it." "As do I, Envoy." Daewon managed a slight smile. "Though I hope future cooperation involves less dancing. I am still recovering from the first time." "Oh, I do not know," Lyran said, her skin displaying that warm golden color again. "Sometimes the best diplomacy happens on the dance floor. After all, it worked rather well for us so far." As they left the council chamber, Daewon reflected on how much his life had changed in just a few days. He had been a simple ship captain with clear duties and a known future. Now he was a liaison between species, a symbol of interspecies cooperation, and apparently someone who conducted important diplomacy through dance. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. It was not what he had planned for his life. But somehow, it also felt right. Like he had found a purpose he did not know he was looking for. The first dance had ended. But in many ways, it was just the beginning. 6 months had passed since the Council's decision. 6 months of the strangest, most challenging, and most rewarding work Daewon had ever done. His life had changed completely. He was no longer a ship captain. Now he spent his days coordinating projects between human and Velkhari teams, mediating cultural misunderstandings, and trying to build something that had never existed before. It was exhausting and wonderful. He stood in his new office on a station that orbited between Earth and the Velkhari home system. The walls were decorated with art from both cultures. Human paintings hung beside Velkhari light sculptures. It was a small thing, but it represented what they were trying to build. A space where 2 different species could exist together, learning from each other. Lieutenant Jimin, who had become his assistant in this new role, entered with her usual tablet. "Sir, you have 3 meetings this afternoon. First, the Joint Science Team wants approval for their research proposal. Second, Ambassador Hana needs to review the cultural exchange program. Third, Envoy Lyran asked if you could meet her in the observation deck at 1800 hours. What does Lyran want to discuss?" She did not say, but she seemed excited about something. After handling his meetings, Daewon made his way to the observation deck. He found Lyran there, along with Called by the Ancient Waves and several other Velkhari he had come to know over the past months. They all looked pleased about something. "Captain," the elder greeted him warmly. "Thank you for coming. We have news to share." "Good news, I hope?" "Very good news. The joint research team of human and Velkhari scientists has made a breakthrough. They have developed a new energy system that combines human engineering approaches with Velkhari theoretical knowledge. The result is more efficient than anything either species could have created alone." Daewon felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly what the Alliance was supposed to achieve. "That is fantastic. When can we implement it?" "The technology needs more testing, of course, but early estimates suggest it could reduce energy costs for space travel by 30%. That would benefit not just our 2 species, but every species in the galaxy." Lyran's skin displayed brilliant colors of joy. "This is only the first success. There are other projects showing similar promise." Tavon, the younger Velkhari who had spoken at the first reception, added, "The human approach to problem-solving is so different from ours. They try things we would consider too risky or too simple. Sometimes those approaches fail. but sometimes they work in ways we never imagined. And your theoretical knowledge helps us understand why our random experiments work, Daewon said. It goes both ways. We learn from each other. Exactly, the elder agreed. This is what we hoped for. Not one species teaching another, but both species growing together. Over the next few weeks, news of the breakthrough spread through the galaxy. Other species took notice. Some remained skeptical, arguing that one success did not prove the alliance's value, but others began reconsidering their positions. The Minari people proposed their own cultural exchange with humanity. Even some of the more conservative Sardec scientists expressed interest in joint research projects, but not everyone was pleased. There were species that saw the Velkari-human alliance as a threat to the existing order. They worried about their own positions in the galactic hierarchy. Some began actively working to undermine the alliance's success. One afternoon, Daewon received an emergency call from a joint human-Velkari outpost on the frontier. A group of unknown ships had attacked the station, destroying several research facilities before fleeing. No one had been killed, but years of work had been lost. This was deliberate, Commander Hayek said over the communication link. He had been assigned to oversee security for Alliance projects. The attackers specifically targeted the facilities where our most promising research was being conducted. Someone does not want this alliance to succeed. Do we know who was responsible? Daewon asked. Not yet. The ships used technology from multiple species. They were trying to hide their identity. Hayek's expression was grim. But this is a clear message. Some beings want this alliance to fail, and they are willing to use violence to make that happen. Daewon called an emergency meeting with Lyran and Ambassador Hana. They gathered in a secure conference room, along with several other key figures from both species. This attack cannot go unanswered, Ambassador Yeona said. She had become less hostile to Daewon over the months, though she still questioned many of his decisions. We need to show strength. We also need to show wisdom, called by the ancient waves countered. If we respond with military force, we play into the hands of those who say this alliance will lead to conflict. We must find another way. What other way? Yeona demanded. Someone just destroyed our research facilities. We rebuild, Lyran said quietly, and we invite other species to help us. Everyone turned to look at her. She continued. The attack targeted our joint research, but what if we make that research more open? What if we invite other species to participate, to share in the benefits? That removes the perception that this alliance is exclusive or threatening. That is a risky approach, Hana said thoughtfully. We would be sharing our advantages with potential rivals. But it transforms this from a competition into a collaboration, Daewon said, understanding Lyran's idea. Instead of other species feeling threatened by our success, they become invested in it. The elder's eyes glowed with approval. This is the kind of innovative thinking the Alliance was meant to foster, turning an attack into an opportunity for greater cooperation. They spent the next several days reaching out to other species, offering them the chance to participate in the research projects. Some declined, still suspicious of the Alliance's motives, but others accepted. The Minari sent scientists. Overseer Crix convinced the Torvins to contribute engineers. Even a few Sardec researchers joined, curious despite their species' official skepticism. The rebuilt research facilities became something new, not just human and Velkari working together, but a truly multi-species endeavor. The work progressed more slowly, with so many different approaches and perspectives, but the results were richer, more comprehensive. 3 months before the end of the trial period, Daewon received a message from the Galactic Council. They wanted a final report on the Alliance before the vote to make it permanent. He spent weeks preparing, gathering data on every project, every success, and every failure. The night before he was scheduled to address the Council again, Lyran found him in his office. He was surrounded by data displays, looking exhausted. "You need to rest, Captain. You have been working for 16 hours straight." "I need to get this right," Daewon said, rubbing his tired eyes. "So much depends on this presentation." "What depends on it?" Lyran asked gently. "The Alliance will continue or it will not. That decision is not entirely in your hands. But I can influence it. If I present the information correctly, if I make the right arguments, if you are anything other than yourself, you will fail." Lyran moved some of the data displays aside and sat on the edge of his desk. "Remember the dance, Captain. You succeeded then not because you pretended to be something you were not, but because you embraced what you were. The same principle applies now." Daewon looked at her, then at all the carefully prepared arguments and statistics he had assembled. She was right. He was falling into the trap of trying to be a perfect diplomat when honesty had always been his strength. "Tell me something," he said. "Has this alliance been worth it for your people?" "Honestly." "Honestly, yes, absolutely." Lyran's skin displayed warm, genuine colors. "My life has purpose again. I wake up curious about what I will learn each day. I take risks. I fail sometimes. And I feel alive in a way I had not felt for decades. Many Velkhari feel the same way. And for humans, it has been incredible," Daewon admitted. "We have learned so much, grown so much. We are not the same species we were 6 months ago." "Then that is what you tell the Council, not statistics and arguments. Just the truth." The next day, Daewon stood before the Council again. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Everyone wanted to see how this would end. Would the Trial Alliance become permanent, or would it be dissolved? "Honored Arbiter, honored Council members," Daewon began. 6 months ago, you approved a trial alliance between the Velkhari and humanity. You asked us to prove that this partnership could benefit both species. I stand before you today to report on what we have learned." He did not use any of his carefully prepared slides or statistics. Instead, he simply told stories about the research team that had struggled for weeks to communicate before finally having a breakthrough, about the Velkhari artist who learned to paint from a human teacher and created something neither species had seen before, about the human engineer who saved a Velkhari life during an accident, forming a friendship that crossed the species boundary. "We have succeeded in some ways and failed in others," Daewon said honestly. "Projects have fallen behind schedule because we had to learn how to work together. Cultural misunderstandings have caused friction. We have made many mistakes." He paused, looking around the chamber. "But through those mistakes, we have grown. Both species. We are not the same beings we were 6 months ago. We have changed each other. And I believe that change is valuable, not just for us, but for the entire galactic community." Called by the ancient waves, stood in the Velkhari section. "I am ancient by any measure. I have lived through epochs of galactic history, and I tell you that these past months have been among the most vital of my entire life. Not because everything went smoothly, but because it did not. We struggled. We learned. We became something more than we were." Other voices joined in. Overseer Crix spoke about how Torvan engineers had learned new techniques from the joint projects. A Minari philosopher discussed how human perspectives had enriched their understanding of consciousness. Even a Sardek scientist, hesitantly, admitted that the collaborative approach had produced unexpected benefits. Finally, the Council Arbiter called for the vote. The chamber fell silent as delegates from each species registered their decisions. The voting process took nearly an hour. When it was complete, the Arbiter glowed brightly. "The Galactic Council has voted, by a margin of 71 to 29, with 12 abstentions. We approve the permanent alliance between the Velkhari and humanity." The chamber erupted in sound, cheers from supporters, angry protests from opponents. Dai-Wan felt Lyran's hand on his shoulder, a gesture of shared victory. Ambassador Hana was openly crying with relief and joy. Lieutenant Jimin pumped her fist in celebration. But Dai-Wan felt something more complex than simple victory. He felt the weight of responsibility. This alliance would continue to face challenges. There would be more opposition, more attacks, more difficulties. But they had proven something important. That growth mattered more than comfort. That connection was worth the risk of vulnerability. That evening, there was a celebration at the diplomatic station. Representatives from dozens of species attended, even some who had voted against the alliance. The mood was festive, full of hope and possibility. At one point, music began playing. It was a fusion composition, blending human and Velkari styles with influences from other species who had joined the collaborative projects. The sound was strange and beautiful, like nothing anyone had heard before. Lyran appeared at Dai-Wan's side. "Captain, would you honor me with another dance?" This time, Dai-Wan did not hesitate. "Of course, envoy, but fair warning, I have not improved much in 6 months." "Good. I would not want you to become predictable." They moved to the center of the floor. Other beings cleared space for them, watching with interest. But this time, Dai-Wan and Lyran were not alone. Ambassador Hana joined them, along with Lieutenant Jimin and Commander Hyuk. Velkari dancers came forward, including Called by the Ancient Waves and young Tavon. Then others joined. Torvan delegates with their heavy rhythmic movements, Minari with their flowing grace, even a few Sardek scientists moving awkwardly but sincerely. The dance floor became filled with beings from across the galaxy, all moving together. They did not move in unison. Each species kept their own style, their own rhythm. But somehow it worked. The differences created something richer than any single tradition. The imperfect coordination made it more real, more honest, more alive. Dai-Wan found himself dancing with Lyran again, their movements familiar now after months of working together, but also new, evolved, incorporating things they had learned from each other. "This is what we created," Lyran said as they moved together. "Not perfection, but possibility. Not uniform agreement, but collaborative growth." "I still cannot believe it all started with one dance," Dai-Wan replied. "The best things often start with a single moment of courage. You were brave enough to accept an invitation you did not understand, to step into uncertainty with honesty. That changed everything." The music swelled and the dance continued. The entire hall moved together, multiple species creating something none of them could have imagined alone. It was clumsy in places, beautiful in others, always real. And in the center of it all, a human captain and an alien envoy, proving that the most important connections happen not when we are perfect, but when we are brave enough to be ourselves. The galaxy would never be the same. And it all started the first time Dai-Wan danced with an alien woman, and the entire hall fell silent. But the silence had ended. Now the galaxy was full of new voices, new rhythms, new possibilities. The dance was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun.